This is your daily dose of all things royal. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. Today's video is the last video that I'm going to be doing about Epstein, but I felt that it needed to be done. I think the majority of you are going to be pretty shocked and find this video interesting, so hang with me for just a little bit to see what this is about. So I've been digging into this whole Jeffrey Epstein case again since my last video, where I shared my thoughts on how the files were handled. Out of curiosity, I decided to take a closer look at the surveillance footage they released, especially the last hour that was recorded. You see, back in 2019, I wasn't really tuned into this, so I had no clue what went down when Epstein died. There were all these theories floating around about whether he really took his own life, but I never really dug into why people were so skeptical. Then, with all the outrage over Pam Bondi shutting down the case and saying there was nothing to see, it totally backfired. Classic Streisand effect, right? So here we are. I finally sat down to make some sense of what happened on the morning of August 10th, 2019. And let me tell you, it's kind of wild. Here's what I found. I started with looking at the 128-page report from the Office of the Inspector General that was dropped in June of 2023, almost 4 years after Epstein's death. It filled in a ton of blanks about the 10-hour prison footage and gave a timeline that raised so many new red flags. I want to walk you through what was going through my head as I tried to match up what the report said with what we can actually see in the video. Oh, and one quick thing for context. Epstein was a pretty tall guy, like 6 feet tall. Keep that in mind when you see some of these photos that I'm going to show you. It will make more sense a little bit later on. But before I dive in, let's make sure we're all on the same page about what we're even looking at in this footage, because I got confused at first, and I've seen others mix it up too. The video shows the south entrance of the 10th floor, not Epstein's actual cell door. There's this one shot where you see here with an arrow pointing to where his cell is on the upper tier, but you can't see the cell itself, just a glimpse of the stairs leading up to it. Another shot shows what the camera looks like if you're standing in front of it. Okay, so now that we have our bearings, here's where it gets weird. The report says only 2 cameras were actually recording that night. The rest were just live streaming, not saving anything. And get this, the prison didn't even realize the cameras weren't recording until after Epstein died. I'm sitting here thinking, okay, where's the room with all the monitors for this so-called live stream? And who's watching it? The report doesn't even say a word about interviewing anyone who was supposed to be keeping an eye on what the surveillance cameras were showing. And when the FBI tried to check the DVR discs, magically corrupted. Every single one. I mean, come on. You've got all these cameras for what? I mean, nobody's watching it. And how do you not have someone making sure the footage is actually being saved? The report says the recording issue started on July 29th, but the prison didn't notice it until August 8th. Then they list this laundry list of excuses, like some supervisor was on vacation, the tech guy wasn't scheduled to come in, no clear policy on how to save video and archiving footage. Literally every reason under the sun for why the cameras were down. I mean, what a mess. I mean, you really can't blame people for wondering, was this all just a crazy coincidence or was something fishy going on? There were so many red flags that have come out of this report. Take, for example, on August 9th, Epstein's cellmate that he had got transferred out, and it was required that Epstein have a cellmate. They would not allow him to be in the cell alone by himself because back in July, I think July 23rd, it was reported that Epstein was evidently suicidal, or at least that's what they were saying. And he was initially being watched, but then was taken off of this high-risk watch. But the psychologist had stated that Epstein needed someone in that cell with him just for supervision. And guess what? The prison and the guards that were on duty that day said that they didn't know, and they didn't put anyone else in his cell. I mean, really? Then there's this big glaring sign at the desk telling staff to check on Epstein every 30 minutes. The two guards on duty that night, well, they just ignored it, I guess. Didn't do a single round. Oh, and Epstein was allowed to make, get this, an unrecorded phone call right before he died. The excuses for this one, honestly, was next level for me. His phone privileges apparently weren't set up, or I guess him as an inmate in that prison wasn't set up to have his phone calls recorded yet. Anyhow, he had told the guard that he was calling his mom, who had been dead since 2004. And the guard didn't even bat an eyelash. And when he dialed the number for Epstein, some guy answered the phone. But the guard never questioned as to who was it. Plus, the kicker here on this one is that they couldn't even trace the number after he died. Too convenient or intentional? It's a little too suspicious, in my opinion. Get this, the guards also let Epstein have a pile of blankets, way more than the 2-blanket maximum allowed in winter. Keep in mind, this was summertime. Oh, and another convenient failure was that the prison guards decided to skip the count rounds and decide to falsely report doing them. And of course, there was an excuse for why they didn't do the rounds, because they were doing back-to-back shifts. And, the guy Thomas had been going off of 22 hours. The other one was overworked. So they were just tired. Now, according to this report, the woman that was on duty, Noelle, who was there also for the morning that Epstein was discovered, checked in on Epstein at 10:41 to deliver extra linens. I'm thinking to myself, she gave him extra linens, but did she not see this mess that's sitting in the room? And on top of it, she was there to plug in his CPAP machine. I guess Epstein had some type of sleep disorder to where he had to wear something. But even so, when you read the notes and it says that just maybe a couple days earlier, he was on suicide watch, why would you leave him with many different items that could help him? You know what I'm saying? Do something to himself. These are just some of the massive screw-ups mentioned in this report. Now let's talk about what happened the morning Epstein was found. According to the report, 2 people were on duty in that area, a woman by the name of Noelle and a material handler by the name of Thomas. It says here, beginning with the highlighted, Noelle told the OIG that at approximately 5:30 a.m., Thomas went to the 10 South unit, which was adjacent to the SHU, to relieve CO number 3, and that CO number 3 briefly walked through the SHU common area as he left and returned from his break. The OIG's review and analysis of the video footage revealed that aside from those 2 officers, no one entered the SHU and no one conducted any counts or rounds. All right, so let's take a look at that footage to confirm this so you can see exactly what they are referencing. So as you can see right here, there is Thomas going to relieve the correction officer number 3 so he can take his break. And there he goes, and here comes in the correction officer. He doesn't go towards the Epstein cell, but he goes out through another entrance that is on the floor. Now, a couple things about Noelle. She is supposed to be sitting at the desks over in the back there while this corrections officer is on his break and Thomas is out in a different unit supervising while this guy is on break. What's really interesting is right before Thomas goes to relieve this correction officer, Noelle then goes and leaves to go off somewhere, but it's not mentioned in this report. At 5:27, you can see Noelle here. 10 minutes before Thomas leaves, go to the store and leaves for a little bit. She stops. She gives a point to the direction of Epstein's door. Not sure what that's about, but then she leaves and she comes back maybe a couple minutes later. Could Noelle have gone to the bathroom? That's a possibility. I mean, it's a reasonable one. But here she is coming back. literally 3 minutes later. She goes back to the desk where Thomas is sitting, and then 7 minutes later, he comes up to go relieve the correction officer number 3 for him to go on his break, as we all saw right here. And I just want you to take a moment and pay attention to this guy's height and notice how short he is. Also, what I want you to pay attention to is what he's wearing. Not only is he dressed head to toe black and with a hoodie, but let's not forget that this is in the height of summer. August. It must be sweltering in there. If you look at the other officers, they're wearing short sleeves and they are in uniform. Maybe it's just me, but I would think a prison facility would have its employees wear something that identifies them as being part of the staff and the facility, whether it be a uniform or some type of identification. Looking at the guy in the middle, head to toe in black, like as if he's some thief in the night, doesn't really, say a lot about protocol for this facility. I mean, how do we know that he indeed really was working there that night as a legit employee? We don't. Now, the other thing that doesn't make any kind of sense, the same guy in the middle there, head to toe in black like a thief in the night, was the one who discovered Epstein. Now, my question is, why was he not also wearing one of those body alert systems? Like, apparently, Noel was told to alert the, system. Apparently, they have some type of button on their uniform to press that alerts whoever immediately to get help. Why wasn't he wearing one of those? That's another question that is unanswered and is not addressed in this OIG report. Now, the other thing that I find is peculiar that has no explanation to it is that when the correction officer number 3 came in to go off and take his 10-minute break, because literally it was from 5:38 to 5:50 that this correction officer number 3 had come in and then left, what we see within those 10 minutes is Noel get up and stand in the middle of this space, almost as if away from, and I'll show you where her view is so you can visualize this a bit better. So to help everybody with perspective, this is what the officer who was sitting at the station, Noel and Thomas, could see. And when you look at these photos, the first photo is the actual view that the officers had all night when they sat at those desks of Jeffrey Epstein's cell. As you can see there, they can see his door. And then in the second picture, that perspective is coming from the actual cell itself. So there was a direct line of sight from the actual window of the cell out to the actual officer station. So the officers had their eye, or could very well see if there was anybody going in or out of the cell, because they literally was sitting in front of it. And then you can see from the surveillance, that's where the camera was in relation to what the officers were looking at. So now put this into perspective and try to understand, why is it that Noel, 5 minutes into the correction officer's break, she gets up and stands in the middle of this common area. You can see here at 5:45, she gets up and she stands pretty much in the middle of this common area, and she stands there for a good minute and a half. Then she goes back to the desk. She doesn't actually sit down. And then she comes right back out and stands a little bit, I want to say, more towards the middle of the room. And she stands there and waits for another minute or so. So to help you understand, as you can see, there she goes. She's right in the middle, and this is what her view is. So it appears to me that she's in the middle of this space looking at the primary SHU entrance on the 9th floor, the same entrance that I believe the correction officer number 3 that was taking a break went through. Or at least that's what we are led to assume here with the limited view that we have of this surveillance. So as you can see, she's standing there at 5:47 a.m. and she waits there for another 2 minutes until the correction officer number 3. So the one important thing that I want to point out here is for you to understand where the stairs are to Jeffrey Epstein's cell. As you can see in the photo of perspective, the officer's station in relation to where the steps are as well as where Noelle is standing. So you can see just a tiny sliver, and that's going to be important in a few minutes. But just keep a mental note that those are the stairs going up to the cell. I think it's worth pointing out that there is Noelle no longer in line of sight of Jeffrey Epstein's cell, or at least into Jeffrey Epstein's cell. Sure, she's standing there and can see the stairs, but can she directly see the cell? No. The question is why? Why did she move away from the desk for 5 minutes to stand in the middle of the room? Now, we could speculate that Noelle is standing there for some type of protocol, but at this point, do we really think that protocol is being followed here on this night? So here she is standing there, and right before the correction officer, number 3, comes back into focus, she goes back to the desk, almost as if she knew that he was about to come back into focus and exit the way that he came in from. Now, keep in mind, he's only been gone for 10 minutes, so I highly doubt he was able to leave the premise, but notice that he has come back now with a bag in his hand. When he first entered, initially, he didn't have this bag in his hand. So where did he get this bag, and what's in that bag? Now, another thing that I find a bit bizarre here is this guy comes back, and as he's standing to be buzzed back in, appears a little impatient. He goes over and he looks at the garbage bin. He picks up the plastic bag, looks in it, and you would think maybe he was about to line the garbage bin properly, but no, he throws it back in and he leaves. Now, could it be he was about to throw something away? Maybe let's take a closer look and slow this down. I don't know, as far as I can tell, looking at this, it doesn't look suspicious. Perhaps maybe he was just curious. Who knows? But what do you guys think? Do you guys see something that I'm not seeing? And literally, like a minute later, Thomas then comes back to join Noelle at the desk. As you can see, comes in, fully hooded, head to toe, all in black. I mean, really, it is bizarre. He should, in my opinion, be wearing a uniform, but protocol is not their strength. So now going back, the time is now 5:50 a.m. in the morning, and the report indicates that around 6 o'clock is when the breakfast trays are delivered from, I want to say, catering downstairs? I don't know, assuming that the main entrance on floor 9 is where the breakfast is coming in. Now, as you can see, it's about 6:03 a.m. on the clock, in which the OIG then writes, on August 10, 2019, shortly after 6 a.m., the doorbell to the SHU rang, indicating that a delivery of breakfast cards have arrived at the SHU. Noelle and Thomas retrieved the breakfast cards from the double-locked entrance to the SHU and brought them inside the SHU. At the time, Thomas and Noelle were the only officers in the SHU. At approximately 6:30 a.m., MCC New York security camera video recordings show Noelle and Thomas walking towards the L tier. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to speed the video up. All you're going to see is Thomas and Noelle preparing and getting the breakfast together. So you're seeing Noelle walk back and forth. I believe she's carrying not only trays, but she's also carrying like beverages. And then you see Thomas over at the bottom corner. They're clearly setting everything up. Now, getting to 6:30 a.m. in the morning, this is where now we'll slow it down. Noelle and Thomas told the OIG that at this time they were entering the L tier, in which Epstein was housed, to deliver breakfast to the inmates. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on this so you can see that there is movement going up and down those stairs at this time. You can see right here that someone is coming down the stairs to go pick up a tray and then they go back. The time on this video is 6:28 a.m. Now, from what I gather looking at this, it does appear somebody's standing at the top of those stairs while the other person goes and grabs the breakfast tray. The time is now almost 6:29 a.m. as discussed previously, between approximately 10:40 p.m. on August 9th and approximately 6:30 a.m. on August 10th, the OIG did not observe on the available recorded video any COs or other individuals approach the L tier where Epstein was housed from the common area of the SHU. Noelle told the OIG that she unlocked the door to the L tier so Thomas could deliver the breakfast trays. Thomas told the OIG that he knocked on Epstein's cell door, saw a portion of Epstein through the window, but could not make out what he saw. So he said to Epstein, "Come to the door, come to the door." Thomas said he did not observe any movement or hear a response, so he unlocked the cell door, entered the cell, and saw Epstein hanged as described further below. Thomas said he immediately yelled for Noelle to get help and that Noelle activated a body alarm, signaling a medical emergency, and began taking the steps described below. Now, if we are to go with what the OIG report is saying, you can see that the two clowns that were handling this at 6:30 in the morning, their position. Clown 1, Noelle, standing by the door that she had to unlock, with Clown 2 inside Epstein's door, depicted on the right. You see, what I don't understand is why didn't Thomas also have a key to the door that Noelle had to open, since he had a key to Jeffrey Epstein's cell? That makes absolutely no sense to me. So, Thief in the Knife Thomas explained that when he first entered Epstein's cell, Epstein had an orange string, presumably from a sheet or a shirt, around his neck. The end of the string was tied to the top portion of the bunk bed. Epstein was suspended from the top bunk in a near-seated position with his buttocks approximately 1 inch to 1.5 inches off the floor and his legs extended out straight on the floor. Now remember, I told you Epstein was about 6 feet tall. Thomas said Epstein did not look discolored or very different from when he last saw Epstein alive. Thomas said he immediately ripped the orange sheet or shirt away from the bunk bed, and Epstein's buttocks dropped approximately 1 inch to 1.5 inches to the ground. Thomas then lowered Epstein's entire body to the floor, and because he did not believe Epstein was breathing, Thomas immediately began providing chest compressions until responding MCC New York staff members arrived approximately 1 minute later. Thomas said he did not provide rescue breaths and was unaware if Epstein was dead or alive because he never checked for a pulse before initiating chest compressions. Thomas said medical personnel took over the emergency response, including chest compressions and use of an automated external defibrillator when they arrived. Thomas said he assisted with bringing Epstein down to the health services unit on the second floor, and then he left MCC New York at approximately 8 a.m. Thomas said he had received CPR training during MCC New York annual refresher training and had responded to medical emergencies in the past, but this was the first time he was the first responder. Okay, so here's what I don't understand. If he saw or thought that Epstein wasn't breathing, why didn't he give any rescue breaths? Immediately goes into doing chest compressions? That makes no sense to me. Thomas said he was present in the SHU for his entire shift on August 10, 2019, from 12 a.m. until the time he attempted to deliver breakfast to Epstein at approximately 6:30 a.m. and did not see anyone go inside Epstein's cell during his shift. Thomas said that he would have known if someone went in or out of Epstein's cell and said no one did. Thomas told the OIG that he could see Epstein's cell door from the SHU's officer's station, but he could not see inside the cell from that vantage point. Thomas said that it was not possible for anyone to have entered the SHU without his knowledge because he or Noelle would have had to open the SHU door for anyone to gain entry. The only other key to the SHU was located elsewhere in the institution. No other MCC New York staff members had the keys required to gain access to the SHU. Moreover, Thomas said that anyone attempting to access the L tier where Epstein was located would have had to walk directly in front of the SHU officer station where Thomas was seated, and no one did. Thomas denied that he or Noel had any role in Epstein's death. You see, that's not entirely true, though. As you saw earlier in this video, Thomas relieved a correction officer number 3 for about 10 minutes. So yeah, he was not there the whole entire time. Now, Noel's side says that Noel told the OIG that on the morning on August 10th, when it was time to deliver food to the inmates, she unlocked the door to the L tier and stood by it while Thomas took the food to the inmates. Noel said that when Thomas knocked on Epstein's door, there was no response. Noel said Epstein's cell door was locked, so Thomas used a key to open it and went inside. Noel heard Thomas call out for her to retrieve the cutter, and then she heard Thomas rip something. Noel said she observed Thomas lifting Epstein from under his arms and dragging him back out of the corner of the cell and laid him down on the ground to perform CPR. According to Noel, within seconds of Thomas calling out for the cutter, she hit the body alarm, which is a button on the MCC staff's member's radio that is used to signal distress or an emergency. Noel recalled hearing Thomas say, "Breathe, Epstein, breathe, and we're going to be in so much trouble." Noel said she stood at the door about a foot away from Epstein's cell and never went in. Noel said Thomas only performed chest compressions and said she did not see Thomas checking for breath or pulse. Noel said that when she saw Epstein, he looked blue and did not have a shirt on or anything around his neck. Noel said she did not get the cutter because Thomas did not need it based upon the ripping sound she heard. Noel said an MCC New York lieutenant who responded to the alarm asked her what happened, and before she got the chance to answer, Thomas stated, "Oh, it's not her fault. We fucked up." Noel did not recall making any comments or statements to the lieutenant. Other than the lieutenant, Noel did not recall which COs responded to the alarm, and she did not know what happened in the cell after MCC New York staff arrived because she was waiting at the bottom of the steps outside the L tier. Noel said she was alone in the SHU for 20 minutes after they left with Epstein, and she kept calling the control center to get status updates. So clearly what you're seeing here is Noel actually down on the floor going back and forward to the phone. Then approximately 6:32 to 6:33, you see the MCC staff come in. So I'm not necessarily believing this version that's in this report because you're seeing Noel is down right in the community center going back and forward, and then you see the MCC come in. Now you see why this story is not jiving anymore? Remember, when Thomas went in and saw Epstein, he said he did not look discolored or very different from when he last saw Epstein alive. But here you have Noel saying that the guy looked blue. In addition to that, Noel said she didn't see anything around his neck, and Thomas never mentioned that he removed anything around Epstein's neck. So now at 6:33, you can see the rest of the MCC staff. This is not paramedics or EMT. This is strictly employees of this prison. You can see it's about 4 of them that come on in. So now I'm assuming that this was the body alarm that Noel had activated, and that's the response. So it literally took maybe a minute and a half for the rest of these employees to get up there. Now, what's interesting here is that prior to the MCC staff entering to find out what's going on, we didn't see any type of panic going on with Noel. Once the additional MCC staff members arrived, you can see them running up and down the stairs, like panicking. Now, unfortunately, I cannot tell who is rushing over to the desk to make a phone call. At first, it looks like it's 3 people, but in actuality, it's 4 people. So is Noel in this group? Maybe, maybe not. But then they run upstairs. So Where is Noel in all of this? Also, Noel was like, I'm not going to bother getting that cutter because I just heard a ripping sound, but didn't know why Thomas was asking for this cutter. Like, what if Thomas needed the cutter to cut whatever was tied around Epstein's neck? At 6:35, you see 4 people now rush back down the stairs and someone standing at the top of the stairs asking for something. Could that be the cutter? The cutter that Noel didn't bother to get? Who knows? Now, here's where timelines don't make any kind of sense. It says, the lieutenant told the OIG that he was the operations lieutenant who relieved the morning watch operations lieutenant on August 10, 2019 at approximately 5:30 a.m. The lieutenant said that at approximately 6:33 a.m., he heard a call for a medical emergency in the SHU and immediately responded to the alarm. When he arrived, Noel told him Epstein hung himself. Once inside, the lieutenant observed that Thomas was performing CPR on Epstein. The lieutenant stated that he asked, "Where's his bunkie at?" And that Noel responded, in substance, that Epstein did not have a cellmate. Noel also told the lieutenant, "We didn't do rounds at 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. Thomas stated, "We didn't do the rounds. We messed up." The lieutenant took over administering CPR and asked SHU staff to retrieve an AED and call for the duty nurse. The MCC New York electronics technician told the OIG that he responded to the emergency call at 6:33 a.m. When the electronics technician first arrived in the SHU, Thomas and other MCC New York staff members were picking Epstein up and placing him on a stretcher. The electronics technician said he and Senior Officer Specialist 6 performed chest compressions on Epstein while he was on the stretcher and being transported to the health services unit on the second floor. So now we're going to get into the eyewitnesses, which are Inmate 5 and 6 and Inmate 7. All 3 of them were interviewed by the OIG, and all 3 of them have different stories. The OIG participated in interviews of 3 inmates assigned to the same SHU tier as Epstein at the time of his death, and who were housed in cells opposite Epstein's cell and therefore had a direct line of sight to Epstein's cell. One such inmate was Inmate 5, who was assigned to a cell directly across from Epstein's cell on the left side of the tier, and who told the OIG that he could see all the cells on the right side of L tier where Epstein was housed. Inmate 5 believed a count was last conducted within the SHU on August 9, 2019, a little before 12 a.m., and said that no additional count was conducted after that time. Inmate 5 did not see anyone or hear anyone go into Epstein's cell on the night of August 9th or the morning of August 10th, prior to a male CO discovering Epstein on the morning of August 10th. Inmate 5 said the male CO knocked on Epstein's assigned cell, looked in, and then opened the door. Inmate 5 could only see Epstein's legs from the knee down, but could tell that Epstein was laying down on his back because his feet were pointed upward. Interesting, huh? The male CO bent down to shake Epstein and was saying, "Epstein, Epstein." The male CO then tried to pick up Epstein from behind with his arms wrapped around Epstein. Inmate 5 said both the officer and Epstein fell back to the floor, with Epstein falling to the side of the officer. Inmate 5 said that once the two fell, he could see that it was Epstein. The CO then started giving Epstein chest compressions and mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. At this point, the officer said, "Fuck," and asked the female CO, who was standing near the L tier gate, if she had pressed the button. The female officer said, "Yeah, a long time ago." A lieutenant then arrived at Epstein's cell along with a male nurse who tried to revive Epstein. Epstein was not responsive. Inmate 5 said Epstein looked dead when the male CO tried to pick him up, and they both fell. Inmate 5 said officers had trouble getting Epstein onto the stretcher because Epstein was basically dead weight. When the officers did get Epstein on the stretcher, Epstein still had on headphones. Inmate 5 did not see any marks around Epstein's neck, and he did not see a rope around Epstein's neck. However, Inmate 5 saw a male CO come out of Epstein's cell with a sheet that had a loop and knot. Now, in that same cell, we have inmate number 6, and they said that a male officer discovered Epstein dead during breakfast delivery on August 10th. Inmate 6 said he observed the male CO entered Epstein's cell and began performing CPR, while the female CO, who appeared panicked, stayed outside of the cell. Inmate 6 said he observed Epstein on the floor but did not see a rope over Epstein's head. However, when Epstein was removed from his cell, Inmate 6 observed the COs holding a rope and a defibrillator. Inmate 6 did not see marks on Epstein's neck, but did see bruising on his face and observed earphones that were still in place on Epstein's ears. Inmate 7, who was 2 cells down from Epstein's cell and on the other side of the tier, told the OIG that he could not see into Epstein's cell, but he could see the cell door. Inmate 7 said, after dinner was brought to Epstein's cell on the evening of August 9, 2019, Inmate 7 did not recall seeing anyone going in or out of Epstein's cell until the following morning at around 6 a.m. Now, that's important because earlier, Noelle had stated that she went to bring Epstein some linens as well as plug in his CPAP machine. He further stated that he did not hear any door pop open that evening. Inmate 7 said he remembered waking up around 6 a.m. on August 10th, 2019, hearing a voice, possibly male, saying, "Breathe." Inmate 7 said he saw Epstein removed from his cell on a stretcher. As you can see, 3 very different stories, with Inmate 7 saying that this took place around 6 a.m. So according to a memorandum attached to the Form 583 from the clinical nurse, it read that Epstein was cold with circumferential bruising around his neck and posterior mottling, pupils fixated and dilated, and no palpable pulses were felt, according to the memorandum at 6:35 a.m. So essentially, Epstein was dead at this point. So then at 6:39 a.m., Epstein was taken to the MCC New York Health Services Unit, and Emergency Medical Services, EMS, arrived to MCC New York at 6:43 a.m. Epstein was transported to the local hospital, New York Presbyterian Lower Manhattan Hospital, at 7:10 a.m. and was pronounced deceased at 7:36 a.m. So it's interesting that despite the nurse's memorandum, a call was placed for EMS and CPR continued, and an AED was utilized and indicated no shock advised, so CPR continued. Epstein was then transported to New York Health Services Unit treatment room with CPR still in progress. Upon arrival, Epstein's pulse was checked and the AED indicated no shock advised. EMS and paramedics arrived on the scene, intubated Epstein, and gave him medications and fluid. Epstein was transported to the local emergency room with CPR in progress at approximately 7:10 a.m. So even though this guy was literally dead, they were still trying to revive him, which, I mean, I don't know what to tell you here, folks. And how convenient that this 10-hour recording stops at exactly 6:40 a.m. So you don't get to see any type of movement of Epstein being removed from his jail cell. How convenient. I think it's pretty understandable why people think that Epstein didn't unalive himself. With all these breakdowns, I mean, it's almost too much. It's how can you actually run a prison and have this many failures, especially with this high-profile guy? And they knew that this guy was high profile. So why didn't they do what they were told to do? Now, the other thing, too, is where is the actual noose that did the job? Because they keep showing these photos of these various nooses being hung all over the cell. But where is the actual one that did the job? Especially Noelle saying that she didn't see anything. Thomas never said that he took off this thing around his neck, right? He just said that he pulled him down. Never mentioned that he took this thing off his neck. And then you have the inmate saying that they didn't see anything. I mean, like, come on. This is like a bit amateur, don't you think? What's also interesting about this is how loose they are with the timelines and the variations of these stories. In addition, you have not only these inmates, but also these two employees who knows where they are? Like, nobody knows who these inmates were that gave their witness statements. And then you have these two employees who I hope got fired, but nobody knows. They did, however, prosecute them, but then they ended up doing some community service of some sort. And that's it. They were let go. I mean, no doubt that this Epstein case is right up there with the JFK assassination. I mean, literally right up there. It's just as bad, Now, I'm with the majority in thinking that we'll never know the truth on what really happened here, nor will we ever know the extent of what this guy had been involved with and who he was involved with. And I do agree with the majority that this looked very much like a cover-up. I mean, there were too many failures and people looking the other way for it not to be. Now, as far as Epstein still being alive, no, I don't think I subscribe to that. I think he's gone, but I don't think he unalived himself. That's just my opinion. I think that this was an inside job. And, I would like to know, why didn't they question or interview this corrections officer who took the break? That's what I would like to know. Also, when you look at him, he's a tall, strapping man. If anything, he would be a prime person to take care of it. You know what I mean? And what was in that bag of his? Inquiring minds would like to know, but will we ever know? Probably not. Anyhow, what do you guys think? Did you see all of this? Definitely let me know your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content, but until then, please be safe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye!
Such a fraud.